Spam waffles in the other corner, which is a Dutch-inspired stroop waffle. And then let's try this. I recommend them. I want to introduce our moderator for the evening. So this is Austin Kiesig. Austin worked at Roll Global in the Finance and Strategy Group, which is the owner of Paramount Farms and Paramount Citrus and Palm Wonderful, before coming to Stanford GSB, and he's been there for the past year as an entrepreneur in residence and case writer. So thanks, Austin. And a big thank you to Local Food Lab. So we have the co-founders, Matteo and Krisha here. Matteo is going to give a few words about Local Food Lab.
Hi, I want to thank everybody for coming. My name is Matteo Aguilar, and along with Krisha Zients, we're the co-founders of Local Food Lab. Local Food Lab helps entrepreneurs. We help support. Our main goal is to help support the ideas and the companies that are changing the food system. Whether it's online online grocery delivery, or urban farming, or food products that use only local and sustainable foods.
I usually do the talking, but I gave him a chance. Give him a round of applause. So basically these models, these new kinds of models, need a different kind of business support. And so far we haven't been able to find that type of business support anyway, so we are offering that online and in these form of events, and also in lots of information and content. And opportunities for people to speak who haven't been speaking before. So
we want to thank Michelle for organizing the event, and thank you very much for coming. I would like to also introduce Robert from the Dutch Consulate, our gracious host.
Thank you. I will keep it short. Well, this is a great turnout. I will just take a very short time. My name is Robert. I work for the Netherlands Office for Science and Technology, which is part of the Netherlands Consulate here in San Francisco. The Office for Science and Technology works on basically getting people in the Netherlands and in the US together in the area of science, technology, and innovation. Food and nutrition is a very important topic. You might know that the US and the Netherlands are actually the two leading countries when it comes to innovation in food and nutrition. To give you an example, the two best agricultural universities in the world are number one, UC Davis, and number two is Wageningen University in the Netherlands, and they have a strategic collaboration in this area. The Netherlands is geographically a small country, but I always say, but we are big in science, technology, and innovation. We are the number 2 in the world when it comes to scientific citation impact. That means that the citation per researcher is the second highest in the world. And also our business relations are very strong. If you look at the investment in the US, the Netherlands is the number 3 foreign investor in the US in absolute terms. For such a small country, that's pretty amazing. And the US is the largest foreign investor in the Netherlands. So we have strong ties. I thank Natasha for making this connection. She was just browsing around on the internet and she found this event. And she saw that you didn't have a venue yet, and so she immediately stepped in. I really love to make the connection with Local Food Lab, with other people, to form collaboration between the Netherlands and the US in this very important topic. And here I stop because I think we have a fantastic panel, and enjoy the evening.
All right, how's the acoustics back there? All good? Perfecto. I'm Austin. Thank you all for coming. This is part of a series of events that are snowballing in popularity in San Francisco. There's really an emerging food community here, and among other places, I think Silicon Valley is redefining the food dialogue and developing through entrepreneurship and programs like Local Food Lab. A lot of innovative, exciting stuff. You're all part of that conversation, so thank you for coming. This is a big tent, food system reform, food innovation, as you can see by virtue of whose room we're sitting in tonight, the Dutch. Also, apart from being tall, smart, and good looking, also know how to throw down. Again, thank you for having us. I'll introduce our panelists. We've got a great lineup here tonight that cover a number of different angles on this topic of grocery delivery. I'll start at the end. Glenn Parker from Plated. Then we have Rahmin. Oh no, sorry. Lauren Bass from LolaBee's Harvest. Rahmin Sarabi from Good Eggs. Rahmin's title on LinkedIn is Egg. Curious to hear what he does. And I'll tell you, your presence is much more commanding than your title would suggest. From Webvan, Gary Dahl, former VP of Distribution, and Toby Hastings from Free Spirit Farm. I will get us started with a simple question. Actually, it's not that simple, I apologize. Please introduce yourselves and your company and tell us what problem you're solving. I also want to add to this, are you a food company, a logistics company, or a technology company? Whichever order you Glenn, you look most deer in the headlights, so I'll call it. I want to know what problem you're trying to solve, and whether you're a food company, a technology company, or a logistics company.
We're a food company, but we solve a lot of problems for people. Well, what we want to do is change the way kind of America eats, or think of eating. One plate at a time, I guess. That's the spiel.
Could you talk louder?
Sorry.
We're missing your
Give me another.
Sure, and tell us very briefly what you guys do.
Basically, we're new to the West Coast. We've been open for since April of 2012 on the East Coast, and what we do are chef-driven meals that come portioned and ready to go for you to become your own at-home chef. We have 5 meals that you can choose from per week, and we'll send it right to your door.
I'm Lauren. I'm the founder of LolaBee's Harvest. We're an online farmers market, so we're sourcing a variety of products, mainly produce, pasture-raised meats, dairy products, eggs, and some prepared foods from local farmers and artisans. So basically, our mission is to build an alternative food system to the industrialized food system and give farmers support and an easier way to get their product into consumers' hands. And on the other side of that, helping consumers make it easier to eat farm fresh product on a weekly basis. So it's really that access that issue of lack of access that we're trying to solve. And I would definitely say we're a food company. Yeah.
I think Good Eggs has a lot of analogs to LolaBee's Harvest. We started with a mission statement to grow and sustain the local food movement with an intention of doing that on a worldwide scale. And I guess the hypothesis was that there was some technology-enabled local food infrastructure that we could build that would enable that. So I think we're a little bit of all the above. I mean, as the journey evolved, we realized if you really wanted to take on that mission, you had to step into the distribution part of the problem. So right now we have like a 10,000 square foot warehouse that's our food hub in San Francisco that's really the template for what we think will take root and flower in cities around the country. And the core DNA of the team really comes from a consumer web software background. And I think it's hard to create anything in the world today without some software component. So we're all technologists at heart. Maybe not at heart, sorry. We're all technologists somewhere.
Well, I'm Gary Dahl, and the 4th category was bankrupt. Anyway, I was the one of the founding officers of Webvan with Louis Borders and David Rock as the 2nd officer hired for the company. Handled all the back-end design and logistics. So if you all want to hear how not to do it, Fire away.
We'll get to that soon.
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
My name's Toby Hastings, and I run Free Spirit Farm, which is a 7-acre mixed vegetable and fruit and egg farm in Winters, which is about an hour northeast of here, near Davis. And definitely a food company, without a doubt. And what I'm really trying to do, it's pretty simple, just produce food for the local community within 50 to 100 miles, and produce that food as sustainably as possible. So using as little resources, as little water as I can, fossil fuels, not using pesticides and herbicides and things like that.
Is there an educational component to your
Yeah, there actually is. So I lease my land from a farmer who started a nonprofit, which is also based on the land, at the same piece of land, and it's called the Center for Land-Based Learning. And they teach high school kids, mostly other age groups too, but about sustainable agriculture and watershed restoration. So it's really great. I get to kind of just tie into their education programs and teach kids, which is really important right now because the average age of farmers is, I think, over 55, and in 10, 20 years, we need people to fill that gap. And right now, I can tell you from first-hand experience, from my generation, most people aren't interested in farming. So it's definitely going to be a big problem soon.
All right, table is set, you know who they are. I wanted to give an intro to this next question. I'll share a bit of history on the grocery delivery industry. So before we can discuss where we're going, we knew where we came from. Webvan is certainly the most infamous name in the grocery delivery lexicon, so let's begin there. Gary, if you need another beer before we start, help him out. This is from the Wikipedia page on Webvan. So while the company was popular, the money it spent on infrastructure far exceeded sales growth. The company eventually ran out of money. For example, Webvan placed a $1 billion order with engineering company Bechtel to build its warehouses, then built a fleet of delivery trucks, 30 Sun Microsystems servers, dozens of compact computers, several Cisco Systems routers, more than 80 21-inch ViewSonic color monitors, and at least 115 Herman Miller Aeron chairs at over $800 each. So this sounds like an absolute nightmare scenario for the modern evangelist of lean startup. Clearly a lot has changed in Silicon Valley between then and now. Today, if I Google online grocery delivery, the top search result is for a company named Peapod. Peapod was a leading competitor to Webvan during the late 90s, and interestingly was almost named iPod. I have a feeling that might have resulted in a lawsuit somewhere down the line. The company survived the dot-com bust only because Ahold, which is a massive international retail grocer, bought them and provided an influx of tens of millions in capital.
Dutch company.
Yeah. Still kicking. Now Peapod is the dominant operator in conventional grocery delivery in the central and eastern U.S. The second Google result, if I do that search, is Safeway. The third is Walmart. Notably, Amazon is getting into the game with Amazon Fresh. Unbeknownst to many, today Amazon.com is actually the leading e-commerce site for groceries. And with respect to Amazon Fresh, some sources say Amazon doesn't care if they make money, they just see this as a way to increase their frequency of connections with consumers. So, my question is, what has changed since the 90s to make the grocery delivery model possible today? Is it changes in the cost and functionality of supply chain and logistics technology? Is it consumer habits and desires, or is it something else?
Well, it's a little bit of both. Let me just go back to the beginning of Webvan and explain why all the Aeron chairs and stuff. This was the dot-com era.
Those are heady times.
You could not get programmers. You could not get engineers that would sit in anything but. So that isn't part of the Wikipedia story. But that's basically what that story is. Webvan actually started out, believe it or not, as a brick and mortar and delivery company. The only difference between Webvan and Peapod was that instead of picking out of stores, which you had all the supply chain costs already absorbed into the consumer-ready position, meaning it's on the shelves. Peapod was nothing more than the feet and the wheels for the consumer, right? So what we thought was, And this started with Lewis doing some things that he was thinking about and things that I was doing when I was with American Stores. I was, prior to Webvan, the Senior Vice President of Supply Chain for American Stores in Salt Lake City. A Peapod account. We had Peapod in Jewel, Oscar, which was one of the holdings in Chicago. This gets me in trouble, but when grocers typically use Peapod or a delivery service like Streamline or some of the others that were out in those days, they kind of did it for the wrong reasons. They had stores that were out there that were failing in comp store sales. They were negative or they were flat. They wanted a way to boost volume. And if you could get more consumers in there, like a Peapod, Streamline grocery, great. And it didn't cost the retailer really anything. So let's go ahead and do it, and it raises the volume and increases the comp store sales. When we looked at the model at American Stores and said, God, all those costs that are getting it into the consumer-ready position, what if you sucked that up and distributed it out of a hub and spoke where you had a distribution center that was fulfillment just for delivery, and then either took it to the stores, cross-dock, or something like that. And I spent, I don't know, 9-10 months doing this analysis with some people with Anderson Consulting. And it was very compelling to do that. The cost structure is very, very different by not spending it, getting into this consumer-ready position. And at that time, the CEO of the company and the chairman made the decision not to go any further with it. Right at that time, I got a call from Lewis Borders, put out a search. He was looking for something. So it was kind of this collective espionage thing that was going on. He was thinking the same way. There's money to be made, taking all the costs upstream. And so back to what I was saying, Webvan actually started as a distribution and small 8,000 square foot neighborhood store, but it couldn't get funded with bricks and mortar. So that whole piece of the equation was taken away, and it was done as a complete 100% online delivery. Instead of stores, we had crappy little cross docks that were 6,000 square feet, instead of having showrooms and things like that. We think about that now, and the way people are talking about Amazon going into retail stores, so that all this showrooming that's going on is actually, coming of age right now. I don't know. Maybe my heart's still there, but I think had we built 8,000 square foot stores, we would have survived the dot-com crash.
Maybe would have bridged the transition from offline behavior to online.
Absolutely.
Behavior a little more clear.
In my mind, there's no question that we would have done that.
Great. Any other panelists want to opine on this? What's changed today?
I think consumer behavior is really important. I mean, Webvan was ahead of its time. I mean, if you guys did what you did today, things could be very different, I think. So I think, I think buying food online is sort of like potentially one of the last, frontiers in buying things online. People sort of had to learn, and the experience of buying shoes at Zappos and sort of getting accustomed to that, I think, has really prepared consumers to be ready to make the transition in behavior. So I think that's that's the biggest piece of it, why we're going to be successful now, whereas it was harder to be successful 12 years ago.
Yeah, consumers are more educated to what's out there.
I guess the one thing I'd add to echo the consumer shift, I believe there's a huge segment of the market that doesn't trust the industrial food system and is looking for alternatives. Mm-hmm. So that creates the fodder for new solutions like ours to emerge.
I'll add one more piece, and it's sort of the technology consumer piece, and that is one of the plays you think about online all the time is that it's a convenience play, right? People, time is the currency, and it's a convenient thing to do. But you forget on the other side that what Amazon has been able to do in terms of if you're even looking at an item, it knows statistically that a correlated item is very, very close to this. So now you have a direct marketing consumer avenue to make relevant offers of items that are correlated very, very highly. And it's, when you think about it as an intimacy play, that's a little bit of a twist over what it was 12 years ago as well. 12 years ago it was always like just a convenience play. Now I think it's morphed into something that's, if you're interested in this, you'll probably like, you know, every time you go into, gosh, even eBay does it. So that's a big shift in technology.
That's a good segue into my next question. There's another preface here too. I found a pretty good report online on the online grocery shopping industry published last year by a consultancy named Kantar Retail. They provide figures for online sales as a percentage of total sales for several different industries. So for computer hardware, 27% of sales are online. Music and videos, 24%. Clothing, 10%. Home furnishing, 7%. Food, beer, and wine, 1%.
Is that current?
That's last year. Yeah. They also released data on why shoppers choose to buy or not buy online today, specific to groceries. The leading reasons to shop online are saves money, convenient, wider variety of products, so access to that long tail of alternative products. The leading reasons to not shop online: I don't want to pay delivery fees. I don't trust someone to pick out fresh food items for me. I like to explore the store and add items as I go, and I enjoy the in-person shopping experience. So there are certainly some things unique to food. Question to you is, your models are largely being tested in affluent, dense urban areas. Will these models work elsewhere, and where won't they work? And which barriers to expansion and adoption do you see as the most difficult and the easiest? It's a big question, but I think there's a lot going on in online grocery shopping that makes this different animal. I'm just curious, what do you see as the biggest barriers to expanding outside, say, the Bay Area, and getting other people to buy into this?
I think there's a certain demographic that we all kind of hit.
Mm-hmm.
Same plane, regardless of whatever we might be different selling, it's the same, you know, demographic. They are going to be more upscale, a little more affluent areas. You know, you're not going to find your rural areas past Sacramento, you know, in Tracy somewhere that you're going to sell to.
Is that purely a function of income? Possibly. Yeah.
I mean, I'll plug, of our 3 pilot programs outside of the Bay, one of them's in New Orleans, and it's doing really well. There's a strong sense of community around food there, and it's definitely not the richest city in the country. So there is a sense that there's a shifting awareness of the value of food in our lives, and a shifting share of our income being spent towards it. So, I mean, we specifically didn't orient our business around faster, cheaper. Otherwise, you're taking Amazon head on. We're about kind of food from people that are doing it right and doing it with integrity.
Yep.
I think the longer term, I mean, you have to start somewhere, right? I mean, that's the way I look at it. That's something that's always, it's just emotionally a little bit of a thorn in my side that we do target affluent customers, and really less affluent customers probably, honestly, aren't going to be shopping on LolaBees right now. But one of the longer term goals is to build a really sustainable company, build the infrastructure that's needed to make this fresh produce more accessible. And as you build that infrastructure and you can build the efficiencies into it, you can start to bring the prices down over time, but it's going to take time. But that's the longer term goal. But it is a pain point right now that, you know, we're not in a position where we can survive as a company if we're targeting low income areas, unfortunately.
I think that awareness and education are maybe equally as important as affluency. My experience with that was just when I was doing a CSA Mart, so like direct marketing boxes from the farm straight to consumers. A lot of the people who signed up said they did because they had just like read Michael Pollan's book. So I think just, you know, it's not just about the money, it's just them knowing, you know, what's going into the food and like the whole process.
Just one point, if you have the margins to support it, then I think that makes sense. For an Amazon or a Webvan or something like that, it was all about density. Webvan made money in San Francisco. It made money in Oakland. Where it lost its money was Orinda, Moraga, you know, Lafayette, where they're driving. There's no value in utility of driving down the road. It's when you pass a block in Orinda, you pass through 3 or 4 homes. How many people is that? You pass a block in residential San Francisco. You talk about the density. So a lot of it is density play for value mass delivery companies. It's all about that.
And I think your answers highlight how tricky this industry is. Because you just named 5 different market and non-market factors, things that are in your control and things that aren't, and make this hard to scale across different constituencies. Toby, I want to go back to you with the next question. You sell through LolaBees. What do you love about this model?
I mean, marketing is one of the most challenging things for a farmer, especially if you're growing perishable things like I am, because you got to get rid of them almost immediately after you harvest them. So just the more marketing channels, the better. Also the flexibility. Like I sell primarily to restaurants, and they have these menus that are, they stay relatively the same for large chunks of time. So they're not going to order, say I have a bunch of this one new crop, they're probably not going to get a bunch of it because it's on the menu. So